What's up, everybody? Thanks for listening.
Oh, the what's up?
The what's up? You guys get the what's up today. I didn't even realize what I said. I was focusing on thanks for listening.
I'm just going into show mode now. Show mode commencing in 3, 2, 1. What's up, everybody? This is the Whatcast.
Thanks for listening to the Whatcast. I don't know what I used
Thanks
to say.
for listening. Mike, what's up? How are you?
I bet it's cold over there.
You're goddamn right it is.
Yuck, 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 yuck.
Ball shrivelingly cold.
Oh, it's the worst kind.
Yeah.
For us ball havers. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about some fun stuff. We've talked about UFOs during wartime. Mike did an epic 3-part series on that a long time ago.
It was I think it was our first year I did that.
And that
3 shows worth. That was fucking crazy.
That taught us to space out.
Yeah.
3-part episodes.
Boy, did it. But it's there now. And some of the stuff there I'll probably end up touching on a bit. This episode we decided to focus on Vietnam specifically. And we're not going to just talk about UFOs, although there are plenty of stories of UFOs, but we're also going to talk about some cryptids and monsters that were experienced, and I've got a really weird story that we'll probably save for the bonus stuff for the patrons. So if you're a patron, go check that out after this episode, because it's one of the weirder stories to come out of Vietnam. If you're not a patron and you're interested, go check it out, and you'll be able to listen as soon as you finish this episode.
Yeah, we're going to try to do noms, but there's just not much to talk about. What are we going to just kick back and forth that The Punisher was canceled finally? It's just, sometimes there's just not enough to do a whole show about. And so we're doing bonus stuff every episode.
Every single episode.
If there's cool stuff to talk about.
Get eaten by sharks.
If there's cool shit to talk about, we'll definitely do a nom for sure. But all right, so UFOs in Vietnam.
There's this one story. It's actually one that I did not talk about during that huge 3-part epic. I think by the time we got to Vietnam, I was just exhausted, and I'm like, yeah, there's like 3 things that happened, and that's it. But there's this weird story that happened around the same time to 2 separate countries. One of them being the U.S. and one was part of the Royal Australian Navy. So it was on June 15th, 1968. Both events happened that night. The American side happened in the Demilitarized Zone, or also known as the DMZ, which is between North and South Vietnam. And they were in a patrol boat that was known as the PCF-12. And it was commanded by Lieutenant Pete Snyder. And they were on their typical nightly patrol, just checking out the waters, making sure there's no enemies around. And at 12:30 a.m., the PCF-12 received a distress call from another patrol boat that was in the area. This one was designated PCF-19. And the distress call that they received was reporting that they were under attack by these lights in the sky. They were referring to them as enemy helicopters. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this or if how familiar our listeners are with the Vietnam War, but the North Vietnamese Army did not use combat helicopters during that period of time. So for them to say they were being under attack by enemy helicopters is kind of weird. It would seem to indicate that there was maybe another enemy involved if there were enemy helicopters attacking them.
Yeah, that had to be crazy to hear that.
Yeah. So thinking that they were under attack by some unknown enemy in attack helicopters, Lieutenant Snyder headed for the area that PCF-19 said they were being attacked in. And as they were coming up to the ship, to the other patrol ship, they saw two circular lights in the sky that were surrounded with what they called a strange glow. And they were hovering right over the PCF-19's boat. One of the lights emitted this beam from it. And as soon as it flashed this light, the PCF-19, exploded.
Holy shit.
And after the explosion, the two lights took off out towards the sea at very fast speeds. So PCF-12 started looking around, scouting the area for anybody who may have survived the explosion. And he was able to find two wounded men. And they were telling him about what they had witnessed. And they said that the two lights had been following them for miles along the river. And they got sick of being tailed by these lights, so they opened fire on it. And once they had opened fire, that's when things turned hostile.
As shootings do.
Yeah. I mean, don't shoot unless you want to be shot back, It's kind of, you're in war. But they thought that the lights were threatening. They had been tailing them. They had no idea who they were. They clearly weren't ours. The officials, after it was reported, first thought that the boat had been attacked by a missile that was fired from shore. But it was later reported from a military spokesperson that the PCF-19 was destroyed by an unidentified object and not enemy coastal batteries. So they knew that it was something out of the ordinary. They just didn't know what. But getting back to the night in question, PCF-12, after this happened and they picked up the soldiers, continued their patrol up the river. And the two lights came back. One on the port side, one on the starboard side. The lieutenant said that they were approximately 300 yards away and about 100 feet in the air. So pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, as far as close encounters go, it's pretty significant. So the lieutenant calls into headquarters and he's explaining what is following them, trying to get a better idea of what these objects are. But in return, he was told that there were no aircraft showing up on radar in that area. So he knew that they were not U.S. or Allied craft, and there was nothing showing up on the radar that would indicate any other craft. And at this point in time, we didn't have stealth. There was no stealth technology. So to have something this close and not show up is kind of strange.
Especially since it just destroyed a ship.
Yeah, exactly. So for some reason, even though the wounded guys that he picked up told him what had happened to them, Lieutenant Snyder told his men to open fire on these craft. And the two craft didn't do anything. They just kind of chilled and continued to follow him at the same pace. So Snyder ordered a retreat at full speed, and the two lights continued to follow after them. And one of the engine men on board, named, I think it's Jim Staffis, he said that he was able to get a good look at one of the craft, and he described it as having a rounded front, and it looked like there were two crewmen inside sitting side by side. But he said from his observation, there were no weapons on the craft, but the aircraft was able to somehow fire on PCF-19. But the witnesses also remembered seeing tracer rounds being fired up from a nearby base called Point Doom, D-U-M-E, not D-O-O-M, which would have been way cooler. But they saw these tracer rounds coming up from the base in the distance, and when they looked over, they saw that there were other blinking lights that were flying around above the base. And eventually the base scrambled F-4 fighter jets, and they were able to chase off the lights.
So they weren't so quick to engage in battle with the airborne craft or
It didn't
jets.
seem that way, no. But now, so from the American side on this night, there were two separate groups of lights. There were the two that blew up the boat and then were following the other boat. And then there was the group of lights that were flying all around over the base. But as I mentioned, this also involved the Royal Australian Navy. And they had a boat called the HMAS Hobart. And this was patrolling an area near Tiger Island, which was, it's off Vietnam. But they said that they saw 30 slow-moving lights that were hovering near this, that were hovering near their ship. And at first they thought that they might have been Russian helicopters, but as they came closer, they realized they weren't helicopters at all. So it was radioed in. The 7th Air Force Phantom fighter bombers were sent out to try to engage whatever these lights were. While they were out trying to track down these lights, the lights were being blasted from the ground by anti-aircraft fire. So as this was going on, the lights flew out to sea and they were chased off by the fighters. And the fighters were shooting at these lights the entire time they were stalking, or they were chasing after them. And then military ships in the area also started to fire at these craft.
Jeez.
And all of this firing going on, unfortunately, led to a friendly fire incident. And one of the U.S. boats that was in the area at the time ended up sinking. And there were 7 crew on board, and out of the 7, 5 of them died. So the HMS Hobart was ready to go to battle, and when they were trying to find out where these things were coming from, it actually showed up on the radar. But they were able to tell that the object that was approaching them was not a friendly craft. The craft approached them, and some more F-4 jets were called out, and again the F-4 jets chased off the craft. But this was one that it was referenced by the Royal Australian Navy specifically, and they had checked the whole area the next morning to see if there was any wreckage, because if there was anything that was in the sky that was physical, it would have been blown out of the sky. So they checked it out, and there was nothing. No evidence of anything falling to the ground at all. The Royal Australian Navy News reported that no physical evidence of helicopters destroyed has been discovered in the area of activity, nor has extensive reconnaissance produced any evidence of enemy helicopter operations in or near the demilitarized zone.
Oh, okay. So they're saying that there's no physical evidence, or after investigating, there was nothing there.
Right.
Wow.
Both. And a skipper that was aboard the Hobart, he actually came out and said that it was certainly not an enemy helicopter. And he was quoted as saying, "Neither before nor after the incident was there any report of any of the ships of a helicopter being there around Tiger Island. Now, having said that, the captain of one of the American ships told me later at Subic Bay that he thought there were helicopters there, but the fact is, he didn't report. And if he believed there was a helicopter, it was his duty to report at the time, but there was no report."
Yeah, can you imagine him not reporting that?
Yeah. And these types of lights were seen on and off for months all along the demilitarized zone. and they would come into the DMZ, then they would go out to sea, or they would go over the north side or the south side. But they would go back and forth over the lines, and no one knew what they were. Sometimes they were seen on radar, and other times they weren't, and the light would be there. When they did appear on radar, though, it always appeared as something flying at low altitudes and at slow speed, like kind of like a helicopter would look like on a radar screen. But then they would just disappear from radar. The lights that were witnessed they'd be there a minute and then be gone the next minutes. And whenever they would send out jets, the objects would either fly away or they would have disappeared by the time the fighters arrived. And the same thing was witnessed from the ground as well. The troops on the ground, they would see these things. They would witness the lights. They would also witness them disappear into thin air. There were other times when the lights would appear, and as soon as they would open fire, the lights would disappear. So it was like they were actively avoiding it, except for that one incident where they blew up the boat.
Yeah, that's weird to hear. I mean,
yeah.
Just imagine if the UFOs they were shooting at during the Battle for Los Angeles decided to return fire.
Right.
We live in a very different world.
Because of all this weird shit that was going on, and the fact that they showed up like helicopters, the term enemy helicopters came to be used like a secret code for UFOs. So in World War II, they had the Foo Fighters. In Vietnam, it was enemy helicopters. Yeah, there was a chief of staff from the U.S. Air Force, General George S. Brown, and in a press conference, he kind of talked about it a little bit. He was asked a question at a press conference about UFOs, and he said, "I don't know whether this story has ever been told or not. They weren't called UFOs. They were called enemy helicopters, and they were only seen at night, and they were only seen in certain places. They were seen up and around the DMZ in early summer of '68, and this resulted in quite a little battle. And in the course of this, an Australian destroyer took a hit, and we never found any enemy. We only found ourselves when this had all been sorted out. And this caused some shooting there, and there was no enemy at all involved, but we always reacted, always after dark."
Wow, that's quite an admittance.
Yeah. And that's from a general.
Wow.
Yeah. So both of those incidents occurred in the same night. And from there were just the sightings. But a lot of them kind of followed along with the Foo Fighter stories, where, just these lights in the sky that would follow the planes or follow boats, and they would just kind of zip around. And there was even a case, this happened later in the war. It was in 1974, but there was a ammunition ship called the USS Kaluuya. Hold on, let me try this. Kaluuya. Yeah. There was an ammunition ship called the USS Kaluuya, and it was operating in the Indian Ocean, and it was being escorted by a destroyer and a aircraft carrier. And around 9:00 at night, there was a group of sailors on the deck that were watching the sky. So they were looking out across the ocean at that period in time, that part of the year. You've heard of the glowing algae.
Yes,
where it
sir.
kind of looks like waves of light just kind of spreading out across the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
They said that was going on at the time, so that kind of drew their attention to the water. And as they were watching these waves of glowing algae, they saw this orange light appear under the surface of the water, and it became brighter and brighter until it flew out of the water, flew over the top of their destroyer, and crashed right back into the ocean on the other side of the ship and disappeared back down into the water.
Some drunk alien?
Yeah. It's just like, hey, let's see if we can fuck with those people. Let's see what happens.
It sounds like they were dealing with every type of UFO.
Yeah.
Is it surprising to hear stories like this when it comes to hearing about huge vessels crossing such vast amounts of ocean? I mean, I almost expect them to run into something fucking weird, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's whatever is behind, whatever intelligence is behind these things clearly has some interest in human warfare. So it makes sense if they were able to go through the sky and through the water that they would also be checking out our ships, both above and below.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's apparent with all the NASA footage, they're checking out whatever space stations and satellites we have out there because they're flying around all over the place.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, not to mention the nuclear sites and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because it seems like now in modern warfare, you don't hear the weird aircraft stuff being discussed as freely anymore. Like with news correspondents going overseas or at press conferences with military. I mean, I had a friend who served. He served in Iraq. And he told me this fucking bonkers story about a UFO that it's never been talked about anywhere else. But he told me that he was on a recon mission and he was looking out. It was at night. He had his night vision binoculars on and he was looking out across the desert and he saw these two aircraft and he said they weren't moving like planes or anything else. And he called it in, or his buddy called it in. Either him or somebody that was in his group called it in. And they saw these two fighters come out, fly over, and blow up whatever these things were. They just launched missiles at him, and then that was that. And he was witness to the whole fucking thing. He said, and he was able to get it on video, but of course it wasn't. It didn't make it home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's crazy shit though, man.
Did he say there weren't supposed to be? I mean, obviously there's not supposed to be any enemy aircraft where they're at. You know,
right? Yeah. And he said that whatever it wasn't attacking, and it came in and it was hovering, and it wasn't helicopters, but it was hovering.
Well, I don't know if I believe on shoot on sight when it comes to these weird cryptid things. We always talk about how if we were in the woods with shotguns and we saw a Bigfoot, we wouldn't be so quick to shoot it, but
no, definitely not.
But I found a story that has changed my mind about that. I came across an article about weird stuff that happened in Vietnam, and in this article they mentioned this book that I'll put in the show notes. I definitely want to grab it. We probably will, thanks to support from our lovely patrons. But in this article, they used a couple of his stories, and this one stood out to me just because it's so goddamn weird. And like I said, if I was in this situation, I think I would shoot on sight. But this story was told by an anonymous U.S. Army corporal, and he reported that in 1970 in South Vietnam, 30 miles south of the DMZ, the demilitarized zone we talked about earlier, he and a platoon of soldiers had made a camp in a heavily wooded area, and that night the platoon started patrolling the area, making sure the area was free from enemy troops. Shortly after the patrol began, they noticed movement coming from directly ahead of them. So they dug in and hid in the bushes and watched this movement occur all around them for about 15 minutes, and when it stopped, they nervously continued their patrol. After continuing the patrol for about another 15 minutes, the men came across what was described as a wall made of stacked rocks. And they looked over this wall, and it was a hill pretty much, but against this hill there was an entrance into a cave. And they noticed that the stone entrance to the cave had been smoothed, like it had been worked by someone. And once they peeked,
like vitrification, like through heat, like the
no, like just like grinding down, smoothing the stone.
Oh, like it was just worked into a tunnel.
Mm-hmm. They noticed that when they poked their head over this wall, they were hit with a really terrible stench that instantly made half the soldiers there sick, which I found pretty alarming. I mean, these guys are fighting in the jungle and they're smelling death every day, so this smell must have been pretty terrible. But they eventually made it over the wall, and they said that they shined their flashlights into this cave and it didn't really light up much. The commanding officer decided to back up about 150 feet and survey the cave overnight to see if anybody was going to be going in or out of this cave. The corporal said that nothing happened until the morning, and then that's when they saw what they first thought was a man stumble out of the cave. But when it stood up, they saw that it was not a man at all. It stood around 7 feet, and they described it as a snake man, and its skin was covered in scales. It had arms and legs, and that there were terrible claws at the ends of the fingers and toes. Its skin was an obsidian black color. It had large front set eyes that resembled a reptile's, and dark green robes. And once this creature stood up and stretched, another one followed. And once they were both outside of this cave, they let out what the soldier described as a hellish hissing sound. Now, I have a quote from what happened next. I'll read. "No one gave the order. It seemed like the entire squad opened fire at once. Every piece of vegetation between us and them was quickly sheared away. I yelled out a ceasefire at the same time I was looking into the direction of the cave. There was nothing there. We immediately checked our flank in case these things circled around us, but there was nothing. As we approached the cave, ready to resume action if needed, it became apparent that the beings had escaped, most likely back into the cave. It was soon decided to set charges and close the cave entrance. When we returned to camp, we all seemed to be in a daze. There was little discussion of the incident, and we never were debriefed, so I know the sergeant never filed a report. Then again, if he did, it was kept quiet by the brass." The robes threw me off, man.
Yeah, it's like he's a fucking a lizard wizard.
Holy shit. You're like a band name machine, dude.
Maybe he's another new minion of evil time traveling Barack Obama.
Ooh, that's scary. I got to draw the lizard wizard now.
Yes. That'll be next month's stickers. The lizard wizard.
So obviously, there's plenty of cryptids from Vietnam.
Yeah, we've talked about the rock apes before on here, which were like these ape men that would throw rocks at the soldiers. And there was also the classic story of the harpy that just kind of two soldiers saw fly out of the sky. It was a woman, a bird woman, basically.
Yeah, but when I heard this, I love this because this just wasn't the normal cryptid from Vietnam. No, what do you think about this? I mean, of course,
goddamn lizard wizard.
Yeah, lizard wizard. The robe is weird, but I've never wanted to add sound effects to telling a story more than in my life than reading this story, and that's just terrifying. I mean, to imagine hearing. I mean, if you've been around like a snake that hisses. It's very impressive how loud it can get. And just imagine a 7-foot tall fucking snake hissing. How loud that had to have been. When I read the quote to where everybody just opened fire, I like breathed a sigh of relief.
You get him. You kill that fucker.
I mean, a whole platoon, literally.
You're a goddamn monster, Mateo.
I am.
What if that hiss was snake for "I come in peace, don't you be"?
Then the sound of my Thompson going off would mean "fuck your face, alien snake wizard." That's
just mean. He just wanted to be friends. He was asking for the gas station.
Be friends with somebody else. The way the story played out in my head, just seeing these creatures pop out of there in my mind, and picturing myself with a troop of soldiers, I would have literally breathed a sigh of relief once everybody started firing, because it just, my brain went like, that's not normal. Shoot it. I mean, to be honest, wouldn't you have that knee-jerk reaction if you're fucking holding an M1 Grand?
No, I would not, Mateo.
Really?
Because I'm not a fucking savage.
If it was a wizard lizard, it had just pulled out this fucking staff and turned you into a fucking pile of rabbit meat.
You didn't say anything about a staff that turns you into rabbit meat.
They didn't let it get that far, but what if
that's a totally different scenario than the one that you presented. No, you presented a lovely gentleman lizard man wearing a resplendent robe who came upon these savage brutes with machine guns and merely was asking for them to have mercy on his life, but he can't speak the language because he doesn't have vocal cords like we have. So all he can do is hiss, and his hiss, he was hoping would come across as being respectful and maybe even supplicating in a way. But no. Instead, they're like, holy shit, it's a monster in a robe, let's shoot it. The fact that he has a robe on, let's just talk about the fact that he has a robe on for a second. The fact that he has a robe on would seem to indicate that there's some level of civilization surrounding him, whether he's a pet that they decided to dress, or whether he himself was a sentient being that chose that robe for that particular occasion. That's, who knows? We don't speak their language. We have no idea. But they see the robe, and rather than be like, hey, look at this civilized creature that's different from us, they're like, oh, fuck, shoot it, make it dead. And you know what? You're one of those savages too, Mateo. You would kill. He could have been a lord. He could have been the king, and you're just shooting at him. You could have brokered a peace deal, and no, you just open fire like a fucking monster. You're furthering the stereotype that humans suck. I'm trying to make the world a better place here.
It could have been.
Oh, yeah, it could have been. It could have been if there weren't monsters like you running around shooting everything that looked a little different. Maybe
looked a little different.
None of that happened. Evil time traveling Barack Obama never would have become evil time traveling Barack Obama to begin with. He travels time because people suck and they shoot things that are different than them, and it makes him sad because he becomes half cyborg and likes to play with barn owls and fucking lizard men, and people just slap the title evil on him just because he's a time lord that goes around time and wants to make the world a better place. I think you guys are evil. I think calling evil time traveling Barack Obama evil is proof of how evil you all really are. Can we start a hashtag good time traveling Barack Obama, please? Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
I'll take all those insults. If it could have been a newlywed couple of lizard wizards that went to a sacred cave where they mate for the first time as a loving couple, and I would have worn their robes that night to bed. Fuck lizard wizards. Oh my God.
You are fucking... Lock this guy up. He is a psychopath. Oh my God. How many children have you skinned in your basement, Mateo? How many human body parts are buried in your backyard?
No humans, just lizard wizard parts.
Oh my God. Do the neighborhood dogs and cats come up missing from time to time?
Nope, just bearded dragons.
Close enough.
Reminds me of that time in Nam.
God damn it. Those poor lizard wizards.
So what are you thinking? Just reptilians emerging from their subterranean cave?
I don't know. There's a lot of evidence, and if I ever have time to devote to putting all the research together, we'll do a show on it. But there seems to be a lot of evidence that a lot of the wars that have taken place over the last century and a half, maybe even going further back, have been proxy wars for two sides of beings. And a lot of times in these theories, it's the Nordics versus the reptilians. But that may, that could be one part of it. And maybe for some reason, like the Nordics are Team USA. So they're always, whatever side that they're on, that's who they aim us at. And then the reptiles, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe the Nordics are actively trying to defeat the United States, and the reptoids are just far superior militarily. So they're able to just keep cranking out the war machine in the U.S., making us go all over the place. Like, fuck you, Nords.
So boots on the ground reptilian soldier.
Maybe just an overseer.
I'm going to go with that just because the robe. Lizard wizard or reptilian war?
I think he could be a lizard wizard reptilian warlord.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very distinct possibility. I've got this weird, I don't even know what to call this. It's not really UFOs. It's not a cryptid. It's just this weird thing that happened in 1970, and it was at Lone John Island. And on this island, there was a team of 5 soldiers, and as they were going through the island, they said that they were being followed by these bright lights that were 4 inches wide. Just these little 4-inch lights following them around. And they said that they were disc-shaped, but they had what they described as looking like black eyes on them. And they were able to avoid any obstacles. They were able to fly really fast, and they would zigzag, go up and down, do loops, all sorts of crazy maneuvering. And then they could hover in place as well. So, as we've seen so far, what happens when soldiers see weird shit? They need to shoot it. So the 5-man team pulled out their guns and started shooting at these 4-inch lights. And when they did, the lights turned red, and where the black eye was, started glowing a bright green color. And then they would, I don't want to say attack, but they would fly around them and like kind of dart at them, like they were dive bombing them like a bird would do or something. And they would follow them through the day and at night for 5 days.
Whoa.
And they would often fly within 5 feet of the people. And one of the guys on the patrol was able to get lots of pictures of them. But when they got back, they were debriefed by their superiors, and they were told to forget about everything that had happened to them. And their equipment was searched. Anything that was relevant to the situation they had just faced was taken. That include the pictures that were taken. They had an outside group come in to interview the men. They never identified what agency they were from or really gave any indication as to who they were. But one of the guys seemed to think that they were CIA. But after all that was said and done, months after the fact, there was some of the people involved who had their families start to be questioned about it. Just men would show up claiming they were from a government agency, and they would ask the soldiers' family if there was any photographic material that had been sent home, and if there was, if they could see it. So it seems, I mean, that it seems like they knew something about that.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason was covering it up. But I don't know what to call that though, because it's not a UFO. There were 4 little 4-inch lights that were flying around.
That's bizarre. And obviously I go right to the fairy stuff, but
yeah. But he said they were shaped like discs.
Yeah. Batteries not included?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, in World War II, there were the Foo Fighters. Some of the Foo Fighters were described as being these small discs, these small disc-shaped lights. Not enemy craft. They would be these small discs. So maybe it's something similar to what that was.
Yeah, but 4 inches though.
Yeah, and they never like really attacked them outright. They just kind of darted towards them.
Turned red and got like cartoonically mad.
Yeah. Like I wish little puffs of smoke came out. That'd be so awesome. Who knows? Maybe there were magic missiles from the lizard wizard.
Yeah, or like some type of scout drone thing.
Yeah, just a bunch of nerdy lizards underground or using joysticks to fly these things around. Like, oh man, why are they shooting at us? We're just trying to fly our drones.
Well, we know the aliens that are inhabiting the area are not scared to shoot. They've already destroyed a ship over there.
I'm thinking that was a rogue. He went rogue. He's like, you know what? Fuck these guys. They keep shooting at us every time we do anything. You know, fuck you. There you go. That's what happens. And then his co-pilot's like, oh shit, he fucked up. We got to get out of here. So then the two lights went flying out to sea, and they're like, all right, what do we do now? And then they like, all right, let's go back and fuck with this guy and see what happens. But that's why they didn't shoot. That's why they didn't blow up the other ship, because they were being yelled at by their teachers. Probably the other craft was like the driver's ed instructor, and he had two fucking punk kids in the other one. And he's like, I'm going to deduct that from your test score. You'll never get your UFO license this way.
That's one thing I wouldn't automatically shoot at, is a UFO.
Oh, so that's where you draw the line.
Well,
Mysterious lights in the sky, I won't shoot. But a fucking guy in a beautiful robe who's just trying to get to his wife to bang in a cave for the first time, I'm going to blow his fucking head off.
Not a guy, a 7-foot-tall wizard. If it was a dude that came out, I would have been like, all right, get on the floor. We got to figure out why are you living in that smelly ass fucking cave. But since it was a giant lizard that came out and hissed like the devil, round to the face.
He's wearing a robe, Mateo. He's not just some beast.
You know, honestly, that would have given me pause. I would have been like, wait, guys, look, it's wearing clothes.
You can't take it back now, Mateo. You've admitted to the world.
Oh, no, I still would have blown its head clean the fuck off. But I would have been like, what? It's got a robe on?
But I would have stopped to consider my actions for a brief moment.
Yeah. I would have been like, huh, that's weird. Boom, 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 boom.
God forbid you try to trip it and restrain it or tackle it.
No.
Or lasso it or anything like that. No, we need to blow its fucking head off.
Lasso it? No, yeah, we'll study its dead body.
You monster.
In that particular case. I mean, there's another story that we'll save for the Patreon, but it has a very interesting turn to it. Very strange encounter. Don't be like me, guys. Don't shoot first and ask questions later. I see the fault in my ways, but just know.
Fucking dirty Harry over here.
Yeah, I would shoot first in this case. And of course, my pants would be full of shit, and I'd probably have to...
You'd probably also shoot the dog man, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Right in his nards.
He just wants to play fetch. He just wants to scratch behind the ears, and you're going to shoot him?
He's never done that to anybody. He's only roared at them and attacked people.
Well, that's because they weren't scratching his ears or giving him belly rubs. He just needs a little belly work, you know?
Have you seen those videos of that dude who plays with those bears? They're like the biggest fucking bears you've ever seen, and he just climbs right in their enclosure, and they lay on him and play with him. I mean, like,
so
it's
awesome.
Its hand is bigger than its chest. It's like the biggest bears you've ever seen.
Yeah, like the Kodiak bears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be awesome if Dogman was like that. Hell yeah.
If he just wants to roll around and play.
Yeah, if his leg twitches when you rub his belly.
I guarantee no one's ever tried to throw a tennis ball and see what happens.
Yeah, I know. We got to call Vic now.
Yeah, Vic. What's up with the tennis ball, buddy? Let us know.
Just travel with a Kong full of peanut butter.
Yeah, there you go. While he's trying to get the peanut butter out of the roof of his mouth, he can fucking hightail it. And by the time he finally gets it down, he looks around and he's like, oh, God damn it. They distracted me with the Kong ball again. And then in frustration, he just sits there and gnaws on the Kong ball for about 20 minutes.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not even that mad about it.
He's like, you know, this is kind of fun. All right. Good on you. Good on you.
Mike is the new Van Helsing.
All it takes is a little rubber and peanut butter.
Thank you for listening to the Whatcast. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, iTunes, and YouTube. Enjoy the podcast. Get yourself a Whatcast t-shirt or a sticker pack. Who was that dude on that one episode? Try the links in Homie's page. All this and more can be found at www.thewhatcasters.com. Thanks again for listening and have a great week.